Welcome everyone to episode 25 of Ty's Training Talking with My Dad. This is the week of July 7, 2025. I'm Tyler Andrews, and here as always with my wonderful co-host and co-host, Mr. C, Tim Andrews, and his wonderful cat Theodosia there for our viewing listeners, for our viewers. Anyways, Mr. C, how are you? How's Theodosia?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Tyler?
Wow. Okay, for our audio-only audience, Mr. C is doing his best Dr. Evil impression, which is really
Really
Did you
bad.
realize that movie came out in the 90s? That there are like people who are probably listening to this that were born well after that movie came
After
out.
that movie was released, yes, but
You know
it's
why I
still
remember
dear
that
to my
movie?
heart.
Is Austin
Yeah.
Powers, for those who don't know. I remember that movie because it was the very first movie. I don't know if you remember this. It was the very first movie that I ever owned on DVD. We went to the mall
Is that right?
and bought it on DVD at the same time that we bought a DVD player. It was like, well, we're buying a DVD player. I guess we have to buy something to go with it. And it was Austin Powers. I remember that very
I
specifically.
don't remember that, but I remember it was a fun movie, and I still remember it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Glad to be here. Glad to have Thea in my lap. So let's dive into the numbers.
Yeah. So numbers this week, a little bit lower. We had 96K of running, 27 and a half hours of training time, and 12,000 meters of vert. Yeah. We'll talk about it when we get to questions, but basically, yeah, those first 3 days were my recovery block, which is my super light 3 days that I usually take every 3 weeks or so. So that was nice opportunity to focus on something other than running. And then, yeah, it felt really good to get back into bigger volume starting a few days ago.
Great. Okay, then let's dive in. So speaking of recovery blocks, so you had your first one this week. Can you remind us exactly what that is and why it's important to you? And how do you enjoy these recovery days? What do you do differently? Do you like them? Do you go crazy? Give us a little flavor for it.
Sure. I think it's really important to have kind of periodization at every scale. We've talked multiple times about this idea that training is kind of a fractal, and that as you zoom in, you see the same patterns of rest and recovery. And so in the same way that I would take rest, in an interval workout, or in the same way that I would take a couple weeks off after many months of hard training, in these kind of medium-sized blocks, which are a few weeks, I like to take a couple of very, very, very light days, usually only about 3, maybe 4, maybe 2, 2 to 4, let's say. Almost always 3, where I really cut my training by like 80 or 90%. Super light for me. So it's maybe like 30 to 60 minutes of training. So really, really, really low volume. And I find that really big reduction in training percentage, I feel better with that than, a kind of traditional running, quote unquote down week would be maybe 75% of training volume, but you'd extend it out for a whole week. I can kind of compress that into 3 days, but do it really, really intensely, and then hop back into training feeling pretty good. So that's how I've always done it. In terms of how do I keep myself busy? Yeah, I definitely wouldn't just sit on the couch and do nothing for 3 days. I actually try to kind of plan the rest of my life so that whether it's a writing project or something for Chosky or a vacation with friends, whatever it is, it's scheduled on those 3 days so that I actually have something to do. So this recovery block, we have a big project with Chosky that we're working on. So that was basically all of 2 of those days, and then one of the days I just kind of gave to myself to relax and hang out with some friends and enjoy not training for 6 hours, and just having a little bit more energy. So I definitely try to have something on those days, but also not schedule all 3 days so full that I don't end up feeling, hungry and ready to go back to training at the end of it. I want to have some of it almost feel a little bit boring, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Wednesday's alleged recovery session did include some 30-90 intervals, and your heart rate got up to almost 170, which seems quite high for a recovery week. How do you balance that, staying sharp while still trying to letting yourself recover and ease down?
I think the volume is so minimal that it doesn't really matter. 30-90s is something I do it's basically 30 second surge and then 90 seconds really easy. I do those on the bike. I do them running. It's kind of like doing strides at the end of a run if you're a runner. I find those to be just a nice little pickup. And sure, like the heart rate got pretty high, but it was for, I don't know, a total of 4 45 seconds maybe at that level for me, which is, is pretty negligible. So I actually do think it's nice to kind of keep in touch with that stuff, even on days that are easier. Like the volume reduction is so extreme. That to me is what the body really feels in terms of just the general fatigue of, oh, I only have to, or I don't like to use the phrase have to. I only train for, 1 hour or 40 minutes today instead of I'm out on Pichincha for 3 hours. That feels like a huge reduction. And so, yeah, doing a couple little pickups at the end of a run, it's just, oh, my legs are feeling good. Let's just keep things moving. I think that's a nice way to do it.
Okay. Okay. So now we're through the recovery and into a new block of training, which for you typically lasts about 3 weeks. So what's different, if anything, about this block versus the last one?
I try not to make any big jumps ever in training. So last block, I was trying to do about 2.5 hours of time on feet each day. This block, that'll be up to around 3 hours. That's not an insignificant jump, but it's not humongous. So that's one. And then same thing with the bicycle. I was doing an hour. This block, it'll be about 75 minutes. So, 25%. It's not insignificant, but to me, that's not a huge jump. It's an extra 15 minutes. It's an extra, 2 hours a week or so. And then the same thing with the altitude. And, we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, continuing to up the altitude on the bike a little bit. I think that's the other big thing. Otherwise, the general progression of workouts looks pretty standard to me. It's kind of the third or fourth build up where I've followed a pretty similar structure of just increasing the length of intervals that I do while trying to keep the pace the same. And then those afternoon workouts that are usually a little bit quicker, trying to keep that volume maybe a tick higher, 10, 20% over the course of 3 weeks. But again, not huge jumps ever. So really it's a little bit more volume, a little bit more volume on the bike. And then, yeah, intervals getting a little bit longer as well. So kind of just gently squeezing everything out, but really nothing super dramatic, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So then let's talk about your actual return to training on Thursday, because it sounded complicated. You did your first Polachowski workout. You had a continuous 25-minute rep plus 5+5 minute intervals. You described this as maybe too aggressive, maybe too greedy. What made you realize, how did you know when, gosh, I'm probably pushing too hard? And then later, you also mentioned the need to stop competing. This one really hit me. You mentioned I need to stop competing with myself from January and focus on just having B+ workouts all the time. So can you explain what was going on? How did you sense that you were really pushing too hard, and then what brought you to this realization, and explain a little bit about what it means to us?
Sometimes right before or right after these little recovery blocks, I can really pop one off if the recovery block is going well. And I also kind of give myself kind of a tacit permission to do that, to go a little bit harder. Because I say, oh, my legs are a little bit fresher. If it's right after the recovery block, or if it's right before the recovery block, it's, oh, I had 3 really easy days, so I can maybe dig a little deeper. And this was one of those circumstances where, well, I guess maybe even let me start with the second part first. I think the whole last, whatever it's been, 6 weeks or so of training here in keto, I have been struggling to not compare myself too much to the build that I did in January to March here. Part of that is because it was just an exceptionally good buildup, and I don't want that to become my only standard. It's apples to apples in a sense, but it is apples to oranges in the sense that, especially as I was getting started in June and coming off of Everest, that was a very different physical and mental state to be in than I was in January. So I've been trying to just give myself a little bit more grace there. And it's hard because I do a lot of the same workouts. It's on the same trail. And so there's this idea of, there's almost 2 different things that you can accomplish in a workout, right? One is physiological, which is I'm making a step forward in my fitness. Usually, like we were just saying with the previous question, those are very small, gradual steps that eventually compound and become big jumps, but over months, not days. The other is you can get a sense of where you are and you can help your confidence. And I think I was too focused on that latter half. I was too focused on this idea of proving to myself, oh, I'm just as fit as I was, 10 weeks out from Everest, or, at this point in February when, I'm trying to draw comparisons. And I think that has been a little bit of a fool's errand. There have been some workouts that have objectively gone better that I've done now this summer versus the spring. And there have been some that have been a little bit slower. And I think that's just kind of regression to the mean. That stuff kind of comes out in the wash. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I still have, what is it, like 5 or 6 weeks here. So I've got plenty of time. And I think I'm going like very, very much in the right direction, and training is feeling really, really good now. But I think that that constant comparison of this build up to last build up, it's not been productive for me. It's not been a helpful way to think about it. So actually, one of the things that I did this week was I went and looked at my build up before Manaslu last year, and like put that all out on a big piece of paper. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so far ahead of every single workout I did last summer. So that was a year ago. Basically the exact same timing, June to August. And then I was on Manaslu at the end of September. So I looked at that and I was like, okay, that makes me feel way better, because that was a really good session. I had a really good fall coming off of that. And I am, way, way, way above the level I was at in a year ago. So, I think to me, yes, it's great to have those points of comparison for January, but I think looking at them every single workout, comparing every single split, that's the part that's been driving me a little bit crazy. And this workout, I think, was kind of a manifestation of that, where I really wanted to go and do something where I'm like, oh, I don't think I could have done this in February, like proving to myself like, oh, this version is better. And yeah, I think it was just a little bit too aggressive, and I set the bar a little bit too high. And I was really going for that A plus workout, and it was fine. Like, honestly, it was a good workout. It was the fastest Polichowski I've done all year. It's, again, like I said before, it's way ahead of anything I ever did last summer. But I was going for the A plus, and it was probably a B or B plus session, which is completely fine objectively. But when your expectation going in is, oh, I'm going to feel amazing, I'm going to run so fast, then the B plus is disappointing. And I realized, we talked about this so many times, that especially in endurance sport, it's so much better to just have B pluses every week. And so like that was kind of my big takeaway from that is, okay, as both like a confidence and enjoyment factor, and also I just believe the best way to train is let's just take those, not easy layups, but those just easy, moderate B plus workouts. Try and hit that every single time out there. No really bad ones. Maybe every once in a while we pop one off really well, but focus on the long term. Focus on just putting in the work every single week. And those lily pads, those stepping stones, you're going to get pretty far if you keep doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, we all experience it at some level when we're trying to make progress in any activity, whether it's running or playing a musical instrument or work or anything, or school. We're trying to make progress, and we like to see that progress. When you get to the super elite level, what's the difference? Let me put it this way: to most of us mere mortals, we couldn't tell the difference between an A plus and a C minus for you, because your C minus is better than our A plus. Okay. And your level of discrimination, the ability
Right.
to tell the nuances between the A plus and the B plus are really substantial. But the reality is you're approaching the limits of human performance. So you're so close to the edge that you can't expect to be right at the edge every time. Whereas, the joy of being not so good is the improvements are much more noticeable because there's lots of room for improvement.
Yep.
It's the mathematicians call this the Pareto frontier. You get to that
Yep.
asymptotic level of performance where you just can't get much better. And it
Yep.
can be frustrating, I'm sure, because, you just can't, you feel like, oh, this is, a B plus and I really should have an A plus. And I really want to make progress, but progress becomes more and more difficult. And the difference in quality is smaller and smaller, but you can sense it. You have enough discrimination to sense it. So
Yep.
it's one of those things where, as you said, you're going to regress to the mean, where the mean is still ridiculously high. So you have to take that into account and just, well, okay, I'm going to have, in fact, B plus days are really unbelievable. There's very few people in the world who can maintain these kind of B plus days on a consistent basis. Objectively is probably more the way to look at it. And if I get an A plus day, that means I'm literally on the asymptote. I'm almost exceeding what's possible. I'm right at the very, very edge of what's possible. So that's hard to do. It's only going to happen once in a while. But the good news, as you said, is if I consistently can perform at this incredible B plus level, then I'm going to be just fine. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that you said that I've been trying to focus on is this idea of just progressing right now. So not focusing on where was I in January, but where was I 3 weeks ago. And that has been really helpful because now you actually can see, yes, it's super minute. And to me, that makes a really big difference. You know, the difference, like literally the workout I did this morning was like the same workout I did 16 days ago. And it was like 6 seconds per kilometer quicker or something. Like it's I don't know, a couple percent, but to me it's very that matters. You know, seeing that improvement over a few weeks because that's real.
sure.
Um, you know, or you know, on Polychowski, okay, I'm taking a minute or 2 minutes off each week. Like those are significant things, but I'm looking at it as this build up and you know, if I'm making progress on average, if that average trend line is going up and to the right, that's what we care about. You know, it's not necessarily, oh, where exactly am I? Because I know that I trust in the training, I trust in the process that I've developed here, that if I just keep doing this and stacking these little gains and little gains, I know that by, you know, the end of August, I'm going to be super, super fit. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day. So to me, that idea of, yeah, having those decent workouts every single week and tracking that progress, you know, week by week and even, you know, month by month, but in the context of this build up, that's what's been, I think, really helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah. hmm Okay, so you sent us pictures, and we talked to you earlier in the week because you had this terrible allergic
Oh, yeah.
reaction on
God.
Thursday. You had this
Yep.
welt that looked like it was the size of a silver dollar.
Yeah, it
And
was.
you said that was the worst you'd ever had in keto. So how do you deal with things like that when you have these unexpected physical issues in the middle of the workout? And you know, do you think that affected your performance, for instance, on that day?
I mean, I hope it affected my performance because then it's like, okay, maybe I get a free 30 seconds next time. I don't know. Um, it was really weird because I have I have actually gotten like very minor rashes. It almost looks more like a mosquito bite from Polychowski, like some plant in there I'm clearly allergic to, and it'll scratch me, and it's just like a mosquito bite, and it's itchy, and it's gone in an hour and I don't even notice it until I'm, you know, back down like on the way home or something. But this time I got to the top and it was a hot day, so I'd like rolled my sleeves up and it was like my arms were covered in hives, like on both sides. The right side was much worse. That was the one that had that huge welt, and it's still actually a little bit puffy. 2 days, 3 days later, whatever it's been. But it clearly, I still have
Oh,
some like little scratches on the surface of my skin, and you know, I was asking Dr. Claude, my AI friend, about this, and he's like, yeah, well, you know, clearly you're allergic to some plant and it scratched you enough that the oils from that plant got into your skin. And yeah, it looked like, you know, a hornet sting when you're allergic to bees. It was really uncomfortable and really big and stayed for a while. That's a pretty unique one, honestly. Luckily, again, I didn't notice it until the workout was over and I was jogging down. Um, and I got down to the car and I was like, wow, this is really not good. And so I took an Uber and went to the pharmacy and got some antihistamines and took that, and, you know, it all went down. But it was still, you know, it was pretty significant. Yeah, I've never really had anything like that happen. So I don't know. That it's something I really think about or plan for. I think you know, it's almost like an injury or just some weird, you know, like when I fell on my rib cage last month. You know, things like that happen, and I think just trying not to get frazzled by them, but just looking at it objectively as, okay, like this is not a fantastic situation, but like what can we do about it? Okay, let's go to the pharmacy and get some drugs. Like I'm fine. I'm, you know, in a city. Like even if I'm having like a severe anaphylactic reaction, I could go to the hospital or something. So it's not like a tremendous like scary big deal. It's more just kind of a weird, unexpected thing, and you just, yeah, you roll with the punches, and that's life, I guess.
okay. Well, we hope you avoid that plant in the future.
Seriously.
Um, so let's talk about your fueling experiment that you did. So you took 3 gels in 20 minutes during that same workout. So
Yep.
what was that about, and what are you learning about race day nutrition and timing and absorption and the various experiments you're trying?
The 3 drills in 20 minutes was a little bit aggressive. Honestly, it was more about trying to just get a certain amount of carbohydrate, grams of carbohydrate in during this entire workout of going up the Polychowski. And one of the things that I've noticed is, you know, I use hiking poles that are like clipped onto my hands when I'm going up, and it's really hard to take a gel when you have poles clipped to your hands. So that day, this was the day where I did that, you know, the 25-minute rep to start. So I didn't take anything for those first 25 minutes just because I'm constantly using my hands. I don't want to stop and take it off and unzip and take a gel or whatever. So I took a gel at like 25 minutes, and then, you know, by the time the workout was almost over, it's like, okay, I've taken 300 calories over the course of whatever it was, 53 minutes, but they were really contained to like that middle 20 minutes. And honestly, it was kind of just an interesting experiment of, okay, like how much Morton gel can my stomach tolerate? And apparently 3 in 20 minutes is fine. I don't know that that scales. I think at some point that definitely would not be sustainable. And you would just start throwing it up. But it's nice to know that, you can kind of like really cram if you need to. And yeah, that's, 300 calories in 20 minutes is a lot. That is, what is that? 120 grams of carbohydrate, right? In 20 minutes. Is that what that is? Yeah. So that's a lot. And being able to take that and have the stomach feel fine is really good. And then, yeah, today, even on the workout, I think I took the morning workout was 80 minutes. And I think I took, what was it? Maybe 600 calories during 80 minutes of carbohydrate. So, and again, no stomach issues. That felt really good. So, yeah, overall, I'd say the high carb fueling on these intense days has gone really well, and recovery has felt pretty good. So that I think is a nice thing to be experimenting with, and just know that I can handle it, and my body won't completely reject it, at least for these shorter bouts.
Yeah. Soon they'll be starting an ancillary competition for ultra distance runners, like the Joey Chestnut hot dog thing, right?
Well,
How
they
many
say that
Morton
ultra
gels
running
can
is
you
just
eat in an hour?
they say that ultra running is just an eating contest with some walking and running thrown in. So yeah, I mean it's kind of already that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the afternoon workout on Thursday, that was supposed to be, you said 24 by 1 minute intervals, but you scaled it back after you noticed your heart rate was pretty high, 175. So talk us through
Yeah.
how you manage that kind of a day. So you go out with one plan, you see what's happening to your metabolism, and then you adjust it in the middle. So how does that all work?
I kind of have an idea of the energy system that I want to hit, and what I want the intensity of those intervals to be, and kind of even the like pacing, like if you imagine a curve kind of tracing the average pace of each interval, like what I want that shape to be like. And this was one where I just got a little bit out over my skis. I just went out a little bit too quick, I think, especially given the harder morning session. And I could just tell, if I'm doing 24 of something, a lot of the time I'm naturally splitting things up in my head. So I'll do, okay, I'm thinking about it as 4 sets of 6, and the first 6 are kind of easing into the workout and then getting to a pace where I'm going to plateau for the middle. Let's say 2 sets of 6, and then the last 6, if I feel good, then I can accelerate a little bit. So the curve kind of looks like like an integral sign on its side, or an S. And this is one where in that first set of 6, I could just tell, or excuse me, the first like middle chunk where I'd kind of plateaued the pace, I was like, okay, this is really too high of a set point. I'm not 100% sure I can maintain this for another 14 reps or whatever. And I'm almost certain that I can't accelerate off of this. So that, to me, that kind of, I almost have to do a little bit of a reset and start thinking about, okay, do I take a longer rest chunk and start this over almost? Or, because what I really don't want to do, I don't like to slow down in a workout. I think that's kind of sending the wrong message, because it's training your body to go too hard, and then you're kind of doing a controlled crater at the end, which is not what you want. So I would rather finish off shorter, but maintaining the same pace. If the intensity is a little bit too high, unless it's something really specific where I just really need to get the volume in. Otherwise, like that idea where, you could bring the pace down and maybe the heart rate drops a little bit, but I don't like that as much. And for me, the afternoon sessions on these double days are always less important than the morning. The morning is more of the focus, and the afternoon is just kind of an additional stimulus. So it's less important, the overall volume and the exact pace, especially, it's so much faster than, more intense than anything I'm actually going to be doing in a race situation, that, it's really more of a metabolic stimulus. So as long as I'm hitting that right heart rate zone for some amount of time, to me, the difference between doing 18 and doing 24 is not humongous. And this was one where it just felt like the right thing to call it on this day, and just cut it and say, okay, this is all we're going to do today. I didn't want to put myself in too big of a hole.
So what do you mean when you say you had an energy system you were targeting?
Like a heart rate zone. In the morning, the longer intervals, maybe my heart rate was I think it was in the low 160s. So really the goal was, okay, I want to be significantly higher than that. I want it to be, let's say between 165 and low 170s. 175 for me in keto, like I don't have a naturally very high heart rate. My max heart rate, especially here in keto, is probably close to 175. Maybe it's under 180. So that's that's very, very high heart rate for me. And it's probably, yeah, over 175 is probably too high for the level of intensity that I was looking for that activity. I think low 170s would have been okay, but as I started to see it creeping up in the 175, it's like, okay, no, that's this is just too hard. My body's a little bit too tired. It's working too hard right now, and yeah, I don't want to get into such a big hole that I'm not, recovered enough again to do another hard day in 2 or 3 days, which is my usual schedule.
Okay, great. Um, so you wrote down no ego decisions as one of your new principles to add to your 16 principles from before,
Yep,
along, I think, with learning how to carry a heavier backpack.
that's true.
Um,
That's on there too. We'll review it in
so
detail.
what prompted that, and how do you notice yourself making ego-driven choices in training? How do you
I
keep your
think that
awareness up?
Yeah, the workout that we talked about earlier, that idea of trying to prove something to myself or to other people, that's where the ego can be problematic. I think ego has a bad rap, and I don't think ego is always a bad thing. I think that to me, it's extremely motivating as an athlete to know that other people are, potentially paying attention to what I do, and that if I'm going out and trying to do something really hard, or if I'm in a race, that there are people paying attention to that, and that even if it's extremely fleeting, that they will, care about that for a second. Like, that matters to me, and it motivates me to push harder when things get really hard, because it's like, well, I don't want to lose to this guy, or like, oh, I'd really like to get this record because I care about it, and also because that'll impact my career and all the. So I think that ego can be, that external motivation, and ego can be a positive thing. I think that when it's problematic is when you start doing things where rationally or in a vacuum you wouldn't do them, and you're really only doing them to satisfy your ego. And that's what I'm talking about here in the context of ego decisions, specifically in training or competing. I think um, I found myself thinking about, oh, should I hop in this race or try and do this FKT? And I had some thoughts like this in the spring as well. And I think I did a pretty good job of recognizing when this is something that is cool and makes sense and it's appropriate in the context of training and what I'm preparing for. And even it will give me some confidence. So those are all great things versus like, oh, I'm really just doing this to, pee in a fire hydrant kind of thing. And so that's the kind of stuff that I've noticed, especially in this last month and a half. And it's mostly been for me. Like, no one else cares about like what time I run up Polychesky or whatever. But it's mostly like that context of, oh, I'm gonna go do this workout, and I'm gonna push myself even harder because I need to beat myself from February or whatever. That's the thing that I'm trying to avoid. Or like, oh, I should go, I'm getting really good uphill fit, so I should go to Cotopaxi and Cayambe and break those short records because I still don't have them. But it's like, okay, that would be kind of cool, but also like it's not super relevant to what I'm doing right now, and it's not like that's not a great use of training energy. There's like a finite amount of training energy that we have, and that's not the best use of it. And that's really just for my ego because I want to do that and have it, like that's something that I'm excited about, but it doesn't actually really make sense from a training perspective. So that's it. I've got very exciting stuff coming this fall, and I don't want to screw it up. Basically, chasing stupid stuff for my ego. Like that's that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we can all relate to that. There are all sorts of silly things we do because we're like, oh, yeah, that would be really cool, even though it's insane and adds no value to whatever the task is we're after for the most
Yeah.
part. Hmm. Okay. Great. So you just had your big session. You mentioned it briefly. So tell me a little bit about that. And did you achieve your B plus goal from your desires that we just discussed a little earlier?
I think it was a really solid B plus day, actually. Yeah. The morning, I did 20 by 3 minutes with 1 minute recovery. That was really, really good. Like I said before, it was just a tick quicker than I'd done like 2.5 weeks ago. Very similar workout. So that felt great. And it was one where I remember like in the middle, the big kind of middle chunk where I was kind of trying to just run steady. I felt like, oh, I could push a little bit. Maybe I'll just push it. And it was like very much trying to practice patience. And no, no, no. Like I kind of gave myself 2 reps at the very end, which is, 10% of the workout to squeeze a little bit. And that felt great. But otherwise, it very much felt like kind of holding back, which is exactly how I want these to feel. And then the afternoon was actually really similar to the other session we were talking about from a few days ago, where I went in with a plan, and I think for whatever reason, the effort was a little bit too high. And so I actually did cut it short. So again, that to me was, I probably could have muscled through that. And I think that would have just got me into a little bit more of a hole than I want to be in. And I think it was the right call to just know when to kind of cut it and when to let it run or push. And yeah, I think right now in training, there's just so much volume and there's so much general intensity going on that if I'm running into that question of like, do I push or do I not push? Like the answer is almost never going to be push, because there's just it's the cumulative effect. There's no one day right now that's really important. It's not like I'm in a race or something. So I would rather just have all of those days be kind of good and never get into like a huge slump or anything because I went really, really hard one day. There's no one day that's really important. And so I just want everything to be kind of fine. And so I think that's a good reminder to myself, is just if I'm ever running into that question of to push or back off, the answer is like pretty much always going to be, okay, just back off for right now. There's
Back
plenty of
off.
time to
Yep.
push later, like when it actually matters.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Good. Anything else you want to add? Sounds like it was a pretty good week.
Yeah, it was a really good week. Yeah, and I'm excited to just kind of be in the thick of it. This block and the next block are kind of the last like two really big 3-week chunks. And these will probably be the biggest chunks of volume that I do. So I'm really excited. Right now I don't have any races on the calendar. I do have UTMB Quito, which is in a few weeks. And then we've got UTMB at the end of August. But other than that, it's just training really hard and getting ready to go. So I'm super stoked.
Okay, then. What's the plan for next week and anything exciting on the horizon?
So we do have a big announcement. We will not actually have our cool down this week. We have a big project we're talking about that is coming up in the next couple of days. So look out for that on your podcast feed. That will be in lieu of today's cool down. So we'll have a special bonus pod out. This should come out probably on Monday, and that hopefully will come out probably Wednesday or Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. Lots of exciting stuff to share with you guys. But yeah, mostly the plan is just like train, eat, sleep, repeat. Like it's life right now. Yeah, today is like one of those days where, we had this on the calendar and I was like, literally as I was leaving for my first workout at like 6:30 in the morning, I'm like doing the math and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to run into 4 p.m. This is going to be a problem. It's just that's training for 6:30 to 4 basically steady. So but we barely made it. I think we started just a couple minutes after the hour. So yeah, it's all
That
good.
was fine. Yep.
But yeah, no, just this is it. This is the life.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Well, I will read us out for this episode. Thank you everyone as always for listening. Please, as always, send your questions, concerns, hopes, dreams to my email, ty@chosky.run, or DM me on Instagram at Tyler C. Andrews. Remember, you can also read my raw training logs on my blog. That's at tylercandrews.com, or get that delivered to your inbox via Substack. Ty's Training is a Chosky media production and brought to you by the Chosky Endurance Collective, the world's leader on online coaching, community, and travel for endurance athletes. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. Ciao.